Inside the avoidance mind, what they secretly crave during no contact. You know that moment when someone pulls away. They stop texting, they become quiet, detached, almost as if you never mattered. It hurts. It confuses you. And if you've ever dealt with someone avoidant, you've probably convinced yourself that their silence means they've moved on. But here's the truth most people miss. Avoidants feel deeply. They just process differently. When you go no contact, it doesn't vanish their emotions, it magnifies them. But they'll never show it the way you expect. Inside their mind, there's a battle. On one side, the craving for connection, the warmth, the safety, the comfort they once felt with you. On the other, the fear of losing independence, of being overwhelmed, of feeling trapped again. When you step back, you don't disappear from their mind, you become safer. Your distance gives them space to miss you without the pressure of intimacy. And slowly, that safety turns into curiosity, then into longing, then into craving. But here's the twist. They don't crave you chasing them, they crave your self-respect. They crave the version of you who doesn't beg for love, but embodies it. Because deep down, what the avoidant truly desires is someone strong enough to stay calm when they pull away. Someone who says, I respect your space, but I won't shrink to earn your love. So if you're in that painful silence right now, remember you're not being forgotten. You're being observed. You're showing whether you can hold your own energy or lose yourself trying to pull them back. Stay grounded. Stay magnetic. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment they start feeling. When someone with avoidant tendencies goes quiet, the first instinct for most people is to assume they've stopped caring. You tell yourself they've moved on, that they don't feel the loss, and that the connection meant far more to you than it ever did to them. But the truth hiding behind that silence is far more complicated. Avoidant individuals don't pull away because they feel nothing. They pull away because they feel too much. Their detachment isn't a lack of emotion, it's an emotional survival strategy. From the outside, it looks cold, dismissive, and uncaring. They stop replying. They seem calm. They post like nothing happened. But on the inside, they're doing what they've always learned to do when things feel unsafe: retreat. For someone with avoidant patterns, closeness can trigger a deep, unconscious fear of losing control. When emotions get too intense, when connection starts to feel like dependency, or when someone gets too close, their nervous system interprets it as danger. So they shut down, not because they've stopped loving, but because their mind tells them love will lead to pain, loss, or being smothered. Their silence is their form of self-regulation. It's how they find stability when connection feels overwhelming. You might see it as rejection, but for them, it's relief, a way to regain emotional balance. They've learned, often from childhood, that vulnerability invites hurt. So they build walls, not because they want to keep you out forever, but because those walls once protected them. The irony is that the more they care, the stronger their instinct to withdraw can become. Their distance doesn't come from apathy, it comes from fear of being consumed by the intensity of their own feelings. When you go no contact and they stay quiet, it doesn't mean you don't cross their mind. In fact, that silence often becomes louder for them over time. They think, they analyze, they remember moments. But they won't reach out because reaching out means risking rejection or confrontation with emotions they're not ready to face. Their version of caring doesn't show through words or constant communication, it hides in restraint. To them, detachment feels safer than expressing affection that might not be reciprocated or might pull them back into emotional dependency. The key to understanding their silence is to see it as emotional overload, not emotional emptiness. When they disappear, they're trying to preserve their sense of self. They need to feel autonomous again, to know they won't lose themselves in another person's expectations or needs. That's why chasing them, demanding explanations, or trying to force a response only pushes them deeper into retreat. It confirms their fear that connection equals pressure. What most people never realize is that during this quiet phase, they are watching, sensing, and waiting. They notice how you respond to the distance. They notice if you crumble, beg, or stay grounded. They might not say it out loud, but they respect the person who doesn't try to break down their wall, only the one who stays calm on the other side of it. Their silence is not a message of disinterest, it's a test of emotional safety. They need to know that closeness won't cost them their independence, that love won't turn into control. And only when they sense that safety can they begin to lean back toward connection, not because they stopped avoiding, but because for once it feels safe not to. When someone with avoidant tendencies steps back, it can feel like abandonment. You might interpret the silence as distance growing between you, as if they're drifting farther away emotionally with each passing day. But in the avoidance internal world, distance doesn't mean disconnection. It means safety. Their space isn't about forgetting you. It's about creating an emotional environment where they can breathe again. When intimacy starts to feel too intense or unpredictable, their instinct isn't to fight for closeness. It's to retreat to regain balance. For avoidant individuals, closeness can easily start to feel like pressure. They crave connection just as much as anyone else, but the moment it becomes too emotionally charged, their nervous system sends alarm signals. The very thing they want, intimacy, begins to feel suffocating. So when they step back, they're not running from you as a person, they're running from the feeling of being consumed or overwhelmed. That space they take gives them room to quiet the noise in their mind, to re-establish control, and to feel like they can exist without being engulfed by someone else's emotions. When you stop reaching out during no contact, that quietness doesn't erase your presence from their thoughts. In fact, your absence often creates a kind of stillness where they can finally process how they feel about you. Without the constant stimuli of texts, calls, or emotional exchanges, their guard slowly lowers. The space that once felt like protection begins to transform into curiosity, an emotional gap where they start to notice what they miss. The absence becomes a mirror, showing them what mattered more than they were ready to admit. Ironically, the more you chase or try to re-establish communication, the less safe they feel. Your pursuit, even when it comes from love, can feel like pressure to someone who equates closeness with loss of freedom. But when you stay still, grounded, and respectful of their space, you communicate something powerful: safety. That safety is what begins to draw them back. It's not your affection that pulls them in. It's your calmness. Your ability to give them space without resentment tells them you're not a threat to their autonomy. In that quiet distance, their mind starts to soften. They remember the warmth of your presence, the comfort of your voice, the sense of connection they felt when they didn't feel trapped. They begin to long for the version of you that felt peaceful, not the version that tried to fix or pursue. Space allows them to reconnect with the positive emotions of the relationship without the fear attached to it. The more they sense you're not demanding their closeness, the safer it feels to move closer again. It's in this paradox, distance breeding safety, that emotional reconnection often begins. They start to feel that missing you isn't dangerous anymore. Missing you becomes something they can allow, even enjoy, because it doesn't threaten their sense of independence. And from that feeling of safety, genuine desire can start to grow again. They can begin to move toward you not from fear or guilt, but from choice. Because when an avoidant feels safe enough to miss you, that's when closeness becomes possible again. Beneath the calm surface of an avoidant person lies a world of hidden emotions that rarely see the light of day. What appears to be composure is often a carefully built defense against the chaos of vulnerability. Avoidant individuals are not immune to craving love or connection. They feel those needs as deeply as anyone else, but the difference lies in how they experience and express them. When they're in no contact, their outward detachment hides an inner struggle between the desire to reach out and the fear of being emotionally exposed again. This tension creates a quiet craving, one they'll never admit, not even to themselves. Avoidants tend to associate emotional closeness with loss of control. To them, letting someone in feels like handing over the steering wheel of their own peace of mind. So even when they long for connection, that longing is tangled up with anxiety. They crave affection, but fear that accepting it means losing themselves. This is why during no contact, when the emotional noise fades and no one is demanding their attention, the craving begins to surface in subtle, unexpected ways. They might think about small moments you shared, check your profile, or replay conversations in their head. But they'll do all this silently because admitting it, even internally, feels like surrendering to a vulnerability they're not ready to face. This emotional craving doesn't disappear simply because they've withdrawn. In fact, absence often amplifies it. When no contact stretches on, their mind starts to wander into memories. They remember the comfort of your energy, the way you made them feel understood, and the sense of belonging they tried so hard to downplay. Yet the moment those feelings grow stronger, so does their instinct to suppress them. They might distract themselves with work, hobbies, or new connections, but these distractions rarely fill the void. The craving doesn't go away, it just hides behind business and control. For avoidants, control is everything. It's their shield against the fear of emotional chaos. When they feel in control, they feel safe. When emotions threaten that control, they retreat. But no contact creates a unique situation. It removes the source of pressure without removing the emotional bond. That's when their controlled environment starts to feel empty. Without you reaching out, there's no one to push against, no need to defend their independence. Slowly, that sense of safety allows suppressed feelings to resurface. They begin to realize that their craving for connection doesn't mean weakness, it's part of their humanity. They may not rush to act on it. In fact, they often resist it for as long as possible. The craving shows up as small impulses, a fleeting thought to text, a sudden emotional memory, a pang of nostalgia they quickly dismiss. They rationalize it away, convincing themselves they're fine. But deep down, they miss not just your presence, but the feeling of being seen without pressure. What they truly crave isn't constant closeness, but connection that feels safe, effortless, and free from emotional demands. They long for someone who doesn't chase, who doesn't try to fix them, but who quietly holds space for them to return when they're ready. And during no contact, that quiet craving grows stronger, not because they've lost control, but because they finally have the space to feel what they've spent so long avoiding. There's something magnetic about a person who knows their worth, who doesn't chase after someone who's pulled away, and who can hold their ground with quiet confidence. For someone with avoidant tendencies, that kind of self-respect isn't just attractive, it's essential. Avoidants are drawn to stability because deep down, they fear emotional chaos. When you lose yourself trying to win them back, when you start explaining, pleading, or proving your value, you confirm their biggest fear, that intimacy will swallow them whole. But when you step back with dignity, when you respect their space and your own boundaries, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You are safe, grounded, and emotionally secure. An avoidant person doesn't crave drama or pressure, they crave peace. And peace is what self-respect brings into any dynamic. During no contact, your silence becomes more than distance. It becomes a message. It tells them that you're not chasing validation from them, that your emotional balance isn't dependent on their response. This triggers something deep inside them because it shifts the balance of energy. They are used to being the one who maintains distance and control, but your calm detachment introduces a new dynamic. Suddenly, they're not the one protecting their independence, you are protecting yours. That makes them feel safe enough to look at you again without feeling threatened. When you stand in your self-worth, you're saying, I want connection, but I don't need chaos to feel alive. That steadiness is exactly what an avoidant person secretly desires, but doesn't know how to create. They may not articulate it, but what they find magnetic isn't the person who tries to prove love. It's the person who can love without losing themselves. Avoidants respect boundaries because they struggle to maintain their own. When they see you practicing self-respect, it subconsciously reassures them that being close to you won't mean sacrificing their freedom. It tells them that emotional intimacy with you won't come with emotional suffocation. Self-respect also breaks the old pattern that fuels their avoidance. Usually, when they withdraw, they expect the other person to chase. That chase validates their fear that relationships equal pressure. But when you don't chase, the cycle is interrupted. There's no pursuit, no emotional tug of war, only calm distance. And in that quiet, they begin to miss the connection, not because they feel guilty, but because they start to see you differently. Your restraint stands out in a world where most people try to force closeness. Your confidence becomes the thing they can't quite shake. Avoidants might never say it out loud, but they crave someone who can hold emotional space without pushing. They want to feel connected while still feeling free. Your self-respect becomes the anchor that allows both of those things to coexist. It tells them you're capable of closeness that doesn't demand control, love that doesn't drain, and connection that doesn't threaten. In a way, your boundaries teach them that love doesn't have to mean losing autonomy. It can mean safety, balance, and mutual respect. And that realization is often what pulls them back towards you, not because they fear losing you, but because they finally see a version of love that feels safe enough to stay. Calmness is one of the most powerful energies you can bring into a connection with someone who has avoidant tendencies. It doesn't look dramatic or loud, but it communicates something that words rarely can: emotional safety. When an avoidant person withdraws, their nervous system is on high alert. They feel overwhelmed, even if they can't explain why. And their instinct is to protect themselves by creating distance. During this time, any attempt to force communication or chase reassurance only heightens their fear that closeness equals pressure. But when you stay calm, when you don't react with panic, guilt, or anger, you show them something entirely different. You show them that connection with you doesn't mean losing peace. The moment you stop trying to convince, prove, or control, the dynamic begins to shift. Your calmness interrupts their fear-driven narrative. They've learned, often through painful experiences, that love comes with expectations and emotional chaos. So when you respond to their withdrawal, not with pursuit but with composure, it challenges their assumptions. It tells them, you can have space and I'm still okay. That emotional steadiness becomes disarming. It creates room for trust to slowly rebuild because they start to see that your presence doesn't threaten their autonomy. It supports it. In no contact, calmness isn't passive, it's powerful. It's an energy that says you understand your own worth and won't crumble in silence. Avoidants pay close attention to how others handle emotional tension. They might not say anything, but they notice everything. The tone of your last message, the energy of your absence, the way you carry yourself when they step away. If your response is stillness instead of desperation, it creates curiosity. They begin to wonder why you aren't reacting like everyone else. They sense that you're not emotionally dependent on them, and that realization makes them feel safer around you, even from afar. Calmness is attractive to an avoidant person because it reflects emotional maturity. It's not indifference, it's composure. It communicates that you can handle your own feelings without projecting them onto someone else. And for someone who fears being consumed by another person's emotions, that composure is magnetic. It tells them that if they were to come closer again, they wouldn't be responsible for managing your emotional state. That awareness starts to dissolve their fear of intimacy. They begin to miss your energy, not the part of you that once reached for them in anxiety, but the version of you that radiates self, assurance, and peace. In this quiet dynamic, your calm becomes the turning point. It shifts the emotional balance from chasing and withdrawing to mutual respect and curiosity. They start to feel your absence not as pressure, but as a presence, something steady, grounded, and hard to forget. Emotional calm doesn't mean you don't care, it means you care without losing yourself. And that is exactly what awakens an avoidant person's deeper feelings. When you stay grounded, you show them that connection with you isn't something to fear. It's something that feels safe to return to. Over time, that calm energy becomes the very thing that draws them back, not because you reached for them, but because you stopped trying to control what was never yours to hold. When you step back and look at the avoidant's mind, what becomes clear is that their silence is never as empty as it seems. Behind the distance, there's longing. Behind the withdrawal, there's fear. And beneath that fear, there's a craving for connection that they've spent years trying to control. No contact isn't just a test of who misses who. It's a mirror revealing how each person handles uncertainty, loneliness, and emotional space. For the avoidant, that time apart often becomes the only environment where they can feel safe enough to feel again. And for you, it's the moment to rediscover your own emotional strength. Because love isn't about chasing what runs, it's about understanding what stays. The goal isn't to break their walls, it's to stand tall enough that they can see over them. When you hold your boundaries, when you choose calm over chaos and dignity over desperation, you show them that connection can exist without control, that love can be steady, not suffocating. Maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But either way, you win because you've learned that your peace doesn't depend on someone else's ability to stay close. You've learned that real power in relationships comes from emotional self-mastery. The the ability to love deeply while staying grounded in who you are. And that's the kind of energy that changes everything, not just in love, but in life. So if you're in that silence right now, remember this: the space between you isn't just about them. It's also about you becoming the kind of person who doesn't chase love, but attracts it naturally by living in alignment with your worth. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, and for choosing growth over reaction. If this message resonated with you, carry it with you, not just as advice, but as a reminder that peace, respect, and self-worth are never negotiable. Because when you lead with calm confidence, the right people will always find their way back to you. Or better yet, you'll find your way back to yourself. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your open heart. Take care of yourself, stay steady, and remember, sometimes silence isn't the end of the story. It's where true connection begins.